I've been prepared for the end of the world my entire life. I'm a Seventh-day Adventist. I was raised on a theology that said Jesus is coming tomorrow.
Yeah.
Be ready.
Stories are a very powerful tool. The stories that we tell shape who we are and change the world in radical ways. Stories connect us from one to another, and Jesus even used stories to teach us how we should live. My good friend Kaleb is a storyteller, and he helps people share their stories to build bridges of empathy and compassion through a social media platform called Humans of Adventism. Adventism, like many other things, has its own unique quirks and qualities about itself, and Kaleb isn't afraid to claim these special traits as ours.
I have kind of a running dark humor line in my head that I've been prepared for the end of the world my entire life. I'm a Seventh-day Adventist. I was raised on a theology that said Jesus is coming tomorrow.
Yeah.
Be ready. In college, I studied dystopian literature a lot. So what happens after society falls apart, that kind of thing. And so as I'm going through life right now, it feels like I'm living in just like a pre-version, like obviously we're not there yet, but like a little tiny version where people are a little more guarded, right? I walk in and I'm like, do I need to buy toilet paper? I'm not out of toilet paper. But what if they're out of toilet paper 3 weeks from now?
Yeah, it's because that's such a trivial thing. Like there are a million other ways to solve that specific problem.
Sure,
it's like the end of the world, and yet it's such a symbol for everything else. Like the toilet paper thing is just a symbol of, wow, things are different now.
Yeah, the ability to walk around my neighborhood, or like I've got a South Carolina license plate, right? And I've heard that people with out-of-state license plates are being pulled over more just to check on like what they're doing.
Make sure you're not traveling.
Yeah.
Oh,
and
wow.
so like there's actually a lot of different ways that kind of fear and uncertainty is being brought in that I normally don't have to think about.
Yeah.
And I'm trying not to let that really bother me too much, but there are so many different ways that my mind is working that it wasn't working a month ago. And at the same time, I think this is a catalyst, especially for our church, but even for our society, to move forward in a lot of different ways, to get back to community-driven stuff, to rely on each other a little more, and to make the best use of technology that we can.
Just like a lot of things have been changing in our lives due to the coronavirus, Kaleb has been adjusting to these changes in his work, telling stories of current events rather than the past, telling people what's presently happening to help build awareness to issues or causes that can help us and help others.
Yeah, it's definitely shifted things in some positive ways, though. So normally I'm taking somebody back on a journey into their past. Right? They're talking about an experience that may have happened in their childhood or, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. Right now, we're focusing very much on the present. And so what my job looks like, instead of spending, 3-4 hours with the person, now it looks like reaching out to more people at once. So I'm getting a feel for our community, especially here in Oregon. I'm contacting the people who run, for example, community service centers. And I'm saying, who's showing up? How are things changing? Like, what is life like for you guys? How are you continuing this? And through that, I get exposed to the people in this conference who are showing up and doing something to adapt to the changes. So, I spend more time looking for those people and getting kind of a full view, and then maybe an hour on the phone with them. So yes, it's changing. I don't have the same amount of time for that individual person, but I do have more of a collective understanding of what's going on because I've been in regular contact with lots more people at once.
Kaleb not only shares stories of his local conference, but the church around the country, and sometimes even around the world. With Humans of Adventism, he's continuing to share the struggles, the triumphs, and the circumstances of Adventists who are handling the pandemic in whatever way that they possibly can. Through his bird's eye view, you can start to see a larger picture of how the pandemic is affecting our church.
With Humans of Adventism, I've been able to reach out in a broader way to see how people are affected by coronavirus. So I actually started with high school seniors, the graduating class, not high school, college seniors, the graduating class of this year.
Yeah.
Potentially won't have a graduation. right? And I think it was in Michigan where they're really debating whether the rest of this semester will count toward people's education.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, so you could potentially have a whole class of people that either has to take additional school before college, or is just behind. Like they're gonna be older than they would have been once they hit college, that kind of thing, and the ramifications of this, just the variety of different ways people are affected is mind-blowing.
Yeah.
Some people are completely without work, like no potential for another job like theirs. My favorite bookstore, Powell's, literally laid off their staff. Like, if you work for Powell's, you're done. Like, you're out of a job
because they don't know what's the future.
Yeah, and thankfully in the past week or so, they've rehired about 100 employees. But I mean, so many people just all of a sudden, things were normal, and a couple weeks later, not only do they not have a job, they don't know where in the world to go.
Yeah.
Where to go around applying for jobs right now.
Yeah.
What do you do in that situation if you've worked there for 20 years or 15 years and then just like, well, you're done? What do you do? Yeah. And a lot of people really either haven't made enough to have savings accounts or, didn't plan for this or whatever. And it's just given me some just real hard insight on just how thin our connection to stability can be. The effects of this, no matter what happens, even if it was magically solved tomorrow, this is going to impact us for forever, the rest of our lives.
There is little doubt that this monumental event is going to change the course of human history. We may pause more to appreciate being around our loved ones, we may change the way we do church, and it may change the way that we even view the Bible and God.
This might sound weird, but I've been big on community for a long time.
Right.
So that is not new to me. What I've gotten a new appreciation for is some more of the Old Testament. Especially the Levitical laws.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people have brought this up. But, context is so important for understanding the Bible and God.
Yeah.
Right? And what's said about him. And it's so easy when you have things going well to look at the Bible and say, like, why was God so strict?
Yeah,
like,
so
why
archaic and barbaric and
this seems extreme, right? Like, why can't they just tell the Israelites to just be kind? Right? Like you see almost like a very different version when God's talking about war and when he's talking about like how to deal with these other nations and how to deal with health stuff and nutrition and that kind of thing. And so like I had kind of a basic level appreciation for that. But I think as my mind is shifting to think about survival a little more, about kind of my physical community a little more and how I affect them, I think it's giving me new eyes to read some of these older laws. My current state is a reaction to the state I was brought up in, right? Like very legalistic. Do it because I said so, not because you understand or because there's a real reason. Like humans can't possibly understand God, just do it, right? And so, I've reacted to that saying, no, I think God wants me to understand him. I think God wants a relationship. But I think what's great is it's taking me back to some of the things that maybe I've pushed aside a bit or at least said like, I'm not going to worry about that. I know what I need to be doing and I can't let that stop me. And now I think taking this knowledge from being love your neighbor as yourself, serving the least of these kind of centric and applying that now again with new eyes to the law, I think is healthy for my faith.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Looking at God and our faith with new eyes. This experience that Kaleb describes really hits home. In so many of the stories of the Bible, we see this trend that during times of crisis, people are given a fresh perspective of life and a fresh perspective of who God is. And I'd like to believe that our story is the same, that in the middle of all of this chaos, that God is revealing himself afresh to us.